They say the truth always comes to light, but I never imagined it would come from a complete stranger. It was a sunny Tuesday afternoon and I was at my desk halfway through my lunch when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me pick it up. What I heard on the other end of the line froze me in my tracks. A woman, her voice calm but sharp, introduced herself as Emily. She wasted no time getting to the point, just 6 words that shattered my reality. "Your wife is cheating on you?" At first, I thought it had to be some kind of prank. My wife, the woman I trusted with everything? But Emily didn't just stop at accusations. "Your wife and my husband," she said, her tone cold but steady. "They've been seeing each other behind our backs." She said she had proof, texts, calls, and even pictures that painted a very different picture of the life I thought we were living. I didn't know what to believe, but something in her voice, her way of speaking, made me stay on the line. She wasn't emotional, just straightforward. She told me things about my wife's schedule, her recent trips, and details I couldn't ignore. The conversation left me shaken. Could this really be true? I needed answers. That night, as my wife sat across from me at dinner, laughing and chatting as if nothing was wrong, I decided I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I was going to find out the truth myself. The first step was checking her phone. I waited until she was in the shower, my heart pounding in my chest as I scrolled through her messages. And there it was, a conversation with a contact saved as Eric, full of flirting and subtle arrangements that made my stomach turn. But I didn't stop there. Over the next week, I began piecing it all together. I tracked her movements and noticed the way she'd suddenly take longer to run errands, or how she'd stay late at work without explanation. I even hired a private investigator to get hardcore evidence to be sure that I was not assuming things. After months of endless suspicion, I finally had the confirmation I dreaded. It wasn't just paranoia. The text messages, the secretive calls, the unexplained absences, they all pointed to one undeniable truth. My wife was having an affair. What the private investigator found confirmed everything Emily had said, and more. The woman I thought I knew, the one I loved and trusted, was living a double life. Once I knew for certain, I contacted Emily, the woman who had first called me. I hadn't spoken to her since she tipped me off about the affair. At first, I hadn't believed her, but the evidence she showed me, texts, photos, and suspicious meeting times, made it impossible to deny. I'll admit, reaching out to her felt awkward. What do you even say to someone in that situation? But Emily didn't hesitate. She was direct, calm, and sharp, like someone who had already cried all her tears and was now ready for war. When we met in person, her confidence threw me off. I was still grappling with the betrayal, unsure of what to do next, but Emily? She had a plan. Sitting across from me at the coffee shop, she said, "We need to expose them. Not just for what they've done to us, but to make sure they can't brush this under the rug and move on like nothing happened." Her words hit me hard. At first, I didn't like the idea. Exposing them sounded messy, public, and honestly beneath me. Part of me just wanted to walk away quietly and move on. But as Emily spoke, her determination lit a fire in me. She told me she had already started the process of divorcing her husband and didn't care if it got ugly. "If I have to drag him through the mud, I will," she said with a steely look in her eyes. "What they did to us deserves consequences." Hearing her speak made me realize something. Keeping quiet wouldn't erase the pain. Ignoring it wouldn't make it better. If anything, it would let them get away with it like our trust didn't matter. Emily's plan wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming our dignity. And maybe it would give me the closure I desperately needed. So I agreed. Hesitant at first, yes, but eventually I saw it as my chance to confront this betrayal. No more sleepless nights wondering why. No more pretending everything was fine. It was time to take control. Emily and I didn't have all the details worked out yet, but one thing was clear: we were going to hold them accountable. And neither of us planned to back down. My wife and I have always been the couple that hosted backyard parties. Nothing too fancy, just good food, drinks, and music to keep things lively. Over the years, these gatherings became somewhat of a tradition. Neighbors and friends looked forward to them, and honestly, I used to enjoy the camaraderie they brought. But this time, things were different. I wasn't hosting this party out of a love for entertaining. No, this one had a purpose. A much darker purpose. It started about 2 weeks before the party, during one of those casual conversations at home. My wife brought it up as we were cleaning up after dinner. "How about we throw a backyard party next weekend?" she said, her tone as light as ever. "We haven't had one in a while, and people are asking when the next one will be." I nodded, playing along. "Sure. Sounds like a good idea." She started rattling off names, listing friends and neighbors as if nothing had changed, as if she wasn't betraying me behind my back. And then she said his name, her lover's name. I was thinking we should invite Eric too. He's been such a good friend lately. A good friend? The nerve of it. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't the time to blow up. Yeah, why not? I said casually, pretending to be oblivious. The moment she turned away, though, I felt a surge of anger. How could she bring him into our home, invite him to our party as if I didn't exist? She had no idea I knew about the affair, and I planned to keep it that way, for now. That night, while she scrolled through Pinterest looking for party decoration ideas, I made a call. I reached out to Emily, Eric's wife. Now it was time to take the next step. I want you to come to the party, I said, cutting straight to the point. I explained my plan briefly. She listened and agreed without hesitation. All right, I'll be there. Let's do this. With that, the stage was set. My wife thought she was in control, that her secrets were safe. But this party wouldn't be like any other we'd hosted before. It wasn't about food, drinks, or laughter. This one was about exposing the truth. The party was already in full swing. The smell of grilled food and the buzz of laughter filled the air. Guests sipped on colorful cocktails, while others gathered around the patio, plates piled high with barbecue and sides. My wife, as usual, was in her element. She floated through the crowd effortlessly, her laughter ringing out as she chatted with guests. She'd stolen a few moments with him, her lover Eric, but she was careful not to stay too long by his side, blending their conversations with mingling to avoid suspicion. I played my part too, laughing with guests and exchanging pleasantries. Inside, though, I was counting the minutes. This night wasn't just about the party, it was about the truth. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Emily, "I'm here." I excused myself and walked to the front yard, where Emily, Eric's wife, waited by the gate. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit, her composure radiating confidence. "Ready?" I asked. "More than ready," she replied with a faint smile. We walked back to the backyard together, chatting like old friends. I kept my tone casual, nodding and smiling as she shared a quick story about her day. It wasn't just for show. I wanted this entrance to feel natural, like we'd known each other for years. The moment we stepped into the backyard, it was as if a ripple passed through the guilty ones. The inevitable moment, my wife saw us. Her face froze mid-smile. She stood rooted to the spot, her glass of wine trembling slightly in her hand. Beside her, Eric turned pale, his jaw tightening as his eyes darted between Emily and me. For a moment, time seemed to stop, and I could feel the weight of their shock hanging in the air. I gave a polite nod to the guests and guided Emily toward the seating area, making sure we looked composed and unaffected by the tension that was now crackling between the four of us. The party continued, but it was clear the mood had shifted. My wife tried to play it off, throwing herself into conversations and laughter, but I could see the cracks in her facade. Eric, on the other hand, looked like he was walking a tightrope. His gaze kept flickering toward Emily, who, much to my amusement, seemed perfectly at ease. When their eyes met, she offered him a sweet, knowing smile. It wasn't the kind of smile you give your spouse, it was the kind of smile that said, "I know exactly where you've been, and I'm not going to make this easy for you." Earlier that day, Eric had told his wife he'd be working late, something about a big project at the office. Clearly, he hadn't expected to see her here tonight. "Working late, huh?" she said softly, just loud enough for him to hear. Eric's mouth opened, then closed again, his mind racing to come up with an excuse. I had to make a stop here, for a client," he stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his own lie. Emily raised an eyebrow but said nothing, letting his flustered state speak for itself. My wife, on the other hand, was struggling to maintain her composure. Her usual charm and grace were nowhere to be found as she fumbled through conversations, avoiding eye contact with both me and Emily. Hours passed and the tension simmered just below the surface. The conversations grew quieter, and the party took on an awkward undertone. Then Emily tapped her glass with a spoon, signaling for everyone's attention. "Can I say a few words?" she asked, her voice steady and composed. The guests gathered around, curious but unaware of what was about to unfold. She smiled warmly. "I want to talk about something we all value: trust. It's the foundation of every relationship, whether it's a friendship, a marriage, or even a community like this." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But trust is fragile. It can be broken with just one lie, one betrayal." Eric shifted uncomfortably, his face a shade of red I'd never seen before. My wife clutched her wine glass so tightly. Emily continued. "What's worse is when someone you trust not only betrays you but does it so boldly, thinking you'll never find out. That kind of betrayal? It deserves to be exposed." A heavy silence followed. All eyes were on her now, the tension in the air almost suffocating. That's when I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the stillness. "I think it's time we add some clarity to those words," I said, holding up my phone. The room shifted as I scrolled through the evidence. Screenshots of text messages, photos, and incriminating details. I turned to my wife and Eric. "Would you like to explain this? Or should I?" Gasps erupted from the crowd as I began reading a few choice messages aloud. My wife's face turned a pale shade of disbelief. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Eric stammered, "This isn't what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like. Months of sneaking around, lying, and disrespecting everything we built together." Emily interrupted, her voice cutting through his excuse like a knife. The confrontation escalated, with both my wife and Eric fumbling for explanations that only made them look guiltier. The guests, stunned, began murmuring among themselves. You could feel the weight of their judgment hanging in the air. People exchanged knowing glances, their faces a mix of shock and disgust. One of the guests, a neighbor who had been our friend for years, leaned over to her husband and whispered, "I can't believe this. How could she do this to him?" Another muttered, "And to think they seemed like the perfect couple." My wife, now visibly shaken, tried to regain control of the situation. "This is between us, not them," she snapped, looking around the crowd as if daring someone to speak up. "Exactly," I said, my voice steady. "Which is why you brought him here to our party in our backyard. You made it their business the moment you disrespected me in front of everyone." I turned to Emily, who had been standing quietly by my side the entire time. She met my gaze with a calm, steady expression, and together, we stepped away from the chaos. As we walked out of the backyard, leaving behind the mess, I couldn't help but notice how their shame had turned our once lively party into an awkward, silent battlefield. The judgment in the eyes of our friends and neighbors was clear. They weren't just looking at my wife and her lover, they were watching the fallout of choices that could never be undone. By the end of the night, there was no denying the truth. My wife and her lover were exposed, left to face the humiliation of their actions in front of everyone they knew. And in that moment, as the party guests dispersed and the reality of their betrayal settled over them, I knew this wasn't just the end of the party. It was the end of everything they'd tried to keep hidden. As the last of the guests left the party, the backyard grew silent. I sat down on one of the empty chairs, staring at the scattered plates and half-empty cups left behind, trying to process everything that had just happened. For years, I had believed my marriage was built on trust. My wife, the woman I had trusted with my heart, had betrayed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. And yet, even after everything, I couldn't bring myself to feel entirely free from her. The memories of us laughing, dreaming, and building a life together haunted me. Were they all lies? Or had we simply lost something along the way? I thought about forgiveness. Could I ever forgive my wife? Not for her sake, but for mine. Could I let go of the anger so it wouldn't consume me? Or would forgiving her make me weak, like I was letting her betrayal slide? I didn't have the answers, but I knew that holding on to the hurt would only poison me further. The path forward felt uncertain. Walking away seemed like the logical choice, but it also felt like a betrayal of the years we had spent together. Staying, however, would mean confronting a mountain of pain and mistrust, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to climb it. I looked up at the stars, their cold light unbothered by the messiness of human lives. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of calm, like I didn't need to decide anything right now. My future, whether it included her or not, was mine to shape. Maybe I'd walk away, or maybe I'd find a way to forgive. Either way, I would choose what was right for me. With that thought, I stood up, brushed the dirt off my pants, and walked back inside. Everything feels different now, like a new beginning. And whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms.